It has been a year of tremendous highs as well as a shocking tragedy in world golf. A new generation of champions is threatening the established order. The old guard continues to resist and fight back. It was a year that also saw the Olympics as well as the Ryder Cup dominate headlines. The best in the sport now assemble in the Bahamas for the Hero World Challenge. Catch all the action from the most exclusive field in world golf all through this week on WION.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide, because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.
Hello and welcome to WION Live Broadcast from Washington, D.C. I'm Simon Marks, and on this bulletin we'll bring you stories from all over the world. Let's kick off with a look at the top stories this hour. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken urges Russia to de-escalate the growing standoff over Ukraine and use diplomacy. He reiterates his threat of serious consequences if Russia resorts to aggression. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov warns that the nightmare scenario of a military confrontation is returning in Europe as tensions spike over Ukraine.
Two cases of Omicron have been detected in Karnataka so far through the genome sequencing effort of INSACOG Consortium.
Two cases of the Omicron variant are identified in the southern Indian state of Karnataka. India's health ministry says both patients are now in quarantine. The United States and Germany join countries around the globe planning stricter COVID-19 restrictions as the new Omicron variant continues to rattle financial markets. And a day after the WTA suspends all tournaments in China, the IOC holds a second video conference call with Chinese tennis star Peng Shuai, who has accused a former Communist Party leader of sexual assault. The foreign ministers of America and Russia have held an in-person meeting in the Swedish capital Stockholm today. The meeting comes after a series of tense exchanges between the two sides over Ukraine. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken walked onto the podium as he waited for Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, to join him for a joint press conference. After days of heated exchanges, the top diplomats from the two historic adversaries spoke about their respective concerns regarding Ukraine.
We have deep concerns about Russia's plans for renewed aggression against Ukraine. That would move us in exactly the opposite direction, and it's simply not in anyone's interest. That's not just our concern, it's a concern that is shared by many in Europe, and I think Sergei has heard that expressed over the last 24 hours here in Stockholm. We have a strong, ironclad commitment to the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine.
And I would like to highlight that we are interested in making steps to regulate to settle the Ukrainian crisis. And the American colleagues who have said on numerous occasions that they are ready to help by establishing a dialogue channel that existed before. And we are ready for that.
The meeting was held on the sidelines of a meeting of the Ministerial Council of the Organisation for Security and Cooperation in Europe. Tensions have been soaring over the Russian troop build-up near the Ukrainian border. It's rattled both Ukrainian and Western officials. They see it as a possible sign of Moscow's intention to invade its former Soviet neighbour 7 years after Vladimir Putin annexed the Crimean Peninsula. But the Kremlin insists it has no such intention. Joining us now live from Moscow is WION's correspondent in the Russian capital, Julia Chapman. Julia, more tough talk in Stockholm today, but has this meeting in any way helped to ease the tensions?
Dialogue is certainly always seen to be a positive when it comes to the Russian-US relationship. Indeed, Secretary Blinken said that diplomacy was the only way to solve a crisis, and he was eagerly listening to what Sergei Lavrov had to say about Russia's concerns regarding Ukraine, regarding NATO expansion and European security more broadly. And there was a fairly friendly rapport between the two foreign ministers, despite the threat that was issued by Secretary Blinken towards Russia if it were to pursue any further confrontation, saying that there would be serious consequences. These are the words we've been hearing from the US, from NATO in previous days at the NATO foreign ministers meeting that was being held in Riga, where Secretary Blinken accused Russia of preparing to invade Ukraine, although he did say he wasn't sure whether Vladimir Putin, the Russian president, had taken such a decision. But certainly having the two foreign ministers at the table, although it was a very brief discussion that they held on the sidelines of this meeting, is a step in the right direction in terms of easing tensions. And it's certainly being viewed well here in Moscow, which is trying to orchestrate a meeting between Presidents Vladimir Putin and Joe Biden before the end of the year, although the White House has confirmed no such plan so far.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if and when that takes place. Julia, we have within the last hour or so received some fresh pictures from Ukraine's border with the Crimean Peninsula. They show Ukrainian forces holding firing drills there today using howitzer systems. I mean, is that going to undo any efforts to damp down the situation and encourage Russia to stand down its military force along the Ukrainian border?
There's no doubt that tensions remain very, very high between Russia and Ukraine, with around 100,000 Russian troops built up along the Ukrainian border, according to Kiev. Although Russia rejects that number, it says there are some 10,000 troops currently staging drills in the wider region. But yes, that does include near the Ukrainian border on the Crimean Peninsula, which of course was annexed from Ukraine in 2014. But Russia has also been pointing to what it calls aggressive rhetoric by Kiev. It has warned that there has been a significant buildup of Ukrainian troops in the Donbas region. Russia claims that half of the Ukrainian army is currently stationed there, which Kiev has dismissed as propaganda and fake news. But the Russian rhetoric has been ramping up, accusing Kiev of stoking these tensions and for accusing NATO and the US for backing them and making things even more tense.
More global anxieties ahead. Julia Chapman, WION's correspondent, live for us today in Moscow. Thanks very much indeed for being on the programme. America is preparing to hold another high-level diplomatic meeting with another of its adversaries, China. The US aims to discuss the rising tensions over Taiwan and an arms race over the most lethal hypersonic weapons. The meeting comes weeks after US President Joe Biden held his first one-on-one interaction with Chinese President Xi Jinping, that virtual summit. Citing people close to the development, reports indicate that ever since those talks, the two militaries have been in touch to discuss the possibility of talks between US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin and the Vice Chairman of China's Central Military Commission, Xu Qiliang. Chinese Defense Minister Wei Fenghe is also expected to take part in the planned meeting. Reports suggest that the format and details of the dialogue are yet to be finalised. However, a telephone call or virtual summit in early January is thought to be on the cards. Meanwhile, sources close to China's People's Liberation Army, also known as the PLA, say that it has started preparations for the defence dialogue and did so even before the Xi-Biden summit took place. For a long time, US military officials have sought to maintain an open channel of communications with their Chinese counterparts in order to prevent any potential flare-ups in the bilateral relationship. But that has proved difficult, with China sometimes boycotting scheduled meetings. The two sides had difficulty reaching a consensus on which Chinese official was Lloyd Austin's counterpart. The United States man of choice has been the military commissioner, while China thought that its defense minister would be the right official to lead talks. The United States has been a vocal supporter, of course, of Taiwan. It has, on more than one occasion, called for Taiwan's recognition by international bodies. Taiwan was also one of the main points of discussion in that high-stakes Xi-Biden summit, where the Chinese president issued a stern warning to his US counterpart over the self-governing island, which Beijing sees as a renegade province to be reunited with the mainland by force if necessary.
也共同维护了印太区域的自由、开放和和平。
China's birth rate last year fell to a record low. Updated figures show it fell to single digits. And things might get worse. The once-a-decade national census revealed that 12 million babies were born in China last year. That's an 18% plunge from just over 14.5 million births in the country in 2019. Data released by China's National Bureau of Statistics shows there were about 8.5 births per 1,000 people last year. That's the first time in decades the number has fallen below 10, and it's the lowest figure since Communist China was founded in 1949. Chinese demographers say that the country is now in a population decline. The number of deaths in China estimated at an average of 10 million per year. Based on the latest data, only around 10 to 10.5 million children are expected to be born annually. The dwindling birth rate is a problem faced by many countries, but China's problem is more severe than some other world powers. Big cities like Shanghai and Beijing are among the lowest fertility rates in the world. Others with a lower fertility rate include Singapore and South Korea. China has pushed for a number of interventionist policies to try and turn things around. More than 20 provincial or regional governments have amended their family planning laws this year, including extending maternity leave for women. In 2015, China's one-child policy was diluted, allowing families to have 2 children. The failure of the 2-child policy then drove China to adopt a 3-child policy. Monthly subsidies have been promised as part of that scheme, but many families aren't convinced. fearing additional children will become an additional financial burden on them. High property prices and rising education costs in China are cited in surveys as the top factors preventing couples from having more children. Now moving on to the US, the pages of a landmark Supreme Court decision from 1973 have been reopened. The Supreme Court here in Washington is hearing oral arguments on the Roe versus Wade ruling, a decision which has kept abortion legal across America for nearly 50 years. But now the constitutionality of that Roe versus Wade decision is back in focus at the US Supreme Court. Our next report gets you all the details.
The U.S. Supreme Court might just fundamentally transform abortion rights in America. It is being asked to overturn the Roe versus Wade ruling, one of the most historic and important cases in America. The U.S.'s conservative-leaning court heard arguments on the Mississippi law, which seeks to ban abortions after 15 weeks of pregnancy. The Mississippi law was passed in 2008. It has no exception for rape or incest.
If you think that the issue is one of choice, that women should have a choice to terminate their pregnancy, that supposes that there is a point at which they've had the fair choice, opportunity to choice. And why would 15 weeks be an inappropriate line?
Lawyers defending the Mississippi law have asked the court to overturn two previous landmark decisions regarding abortion, one of which is the 1973 decision that gave women the right to have an abortion up until the fetus is viable. This can only happen around 24 weeks into pregnancy. And the other, 1992 ruling in Planned Parenthood versus Cassie, which reaffirmed Roe. Another narrative that dominated the Wednesday hearing was that abortion rights is an issue for Congress to decide.
The Constitution places its trust in the people. On hard issue after hard issue, the people make this country work. Abortion is a hard issue. It demands the best from all of us, not a judgment by just a few of us. When an issue affects everyone, and when the Constitution does not take sides on it, it belongs to the people.
Abortion is a sensitive issue in the U.S. It has played a crucial part in politics. While judges debated inside the courtroom, hundreds of protesters, both pro-life and pro-abortion, gathered outside the Supreme Court building in Washington.
I'm very frightened about I do believe that many of us will go back to coat hangers and back alleys. Women will find ways to terminate pregnancies. And when we make that illegal, women will go back to desperate ways. Some women will be able to access the medications that allow them to safely terminate a pregnancy, but I'm afraid that many more women and girls will be in back alleys with coat hangers. I worry we're going to find them on country roads, dead.
The stakes are high, as a dozen states have trigger laws on the books that would immediately ban abortions if the court overturns Roe v. Wade. This hearing also comes at a time when most judges of the Supreme Court are conservative or anti-abortion. This is an opportunity seen by pro-life activists to end the abortion debate in their favor.
The court now has a 6-3 conservative majority, and that includes 3 appointees of President Donald Trump, who pledged to appoint what he called pro-life justices who would, as he said, automatically overturn Roe v. Wade. And so those justices today were part of the conservative majority that seemed quite ready to uphold the Mississippi law and raise serious questions about the fate of the Roe and Casey decisions.
Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Now, there's been a breakthrough in the world of paleontology, the study of fossils. Researchers in Germany say they have been able to identify bone disease in the fossilised remains of a Tyrannosaurus rex. This by employing a CAT scan-based approach as an alternative to some of the more destructive approaches more usually taken. They may just have opened a new avenue for paleontological research.
Here are some breakthrough in paleontological research that have come to light. First up, we have a new fossil found in Chile. One that is of a strange dog-sized specimen. But here's the catch. It has a tail, equipped with blades. Yes, you heard that right. Blades. Some dinosaurs have spiked tails which could be used as stabbing weapons, and others had tails with clubs. This one is a slasher. Just when we thought dinosaurs couldn't get any scarier, here you have a dog-like dinosaur with a wagging tail. Only this one could cause some serious damage.
The importance of this investigation lies in the discovery of a new armored dinosaur species that lived in Chile. It's the most complete found in South America, and besides allows us to connect it with other armored dinosaur species known in other continents of the southern hemisphere, which that reveals there exists a new lineage of ankylosaur. That is the name given by us to this armored dinosaur.
And then we have Tristan Otto. This magnificent skeleton, one of the only two original T-Rex skeletons in Europe, at least till now. What you don't see here is that Tristan Otto, in fact, had a bone disease in his lower left jaw, one that was discovered only recently, all thanks to a new approach in paleontological research, a CT scan.
We used a clinical CT scanner in combination with a technology called dual energy computed tomography, and this method deploys X-rays on two different energy levels, which allows us to look on the tissue composition and also on the process of the diseases, bone diseases.
A breakthrough in paleontological research, one that is non-destructive and non-invasive. All the earlier processes of sampling and testing require the bones to be sliced and then studied. But this method has opened up a new avenue. And one may say this new method of research has come just at the right time, as it may help further study of the blades on the dog-sized specimen in Chile. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
And that's the Thursday edition of WION Live Broadcast from Washington, D.C. I'm going to go away and start practicing the word paleontological. We'll be back again tomorrow. And of course, stay with WION for all your news updates. World is One.
There are many other... this is right, Arab.
You don't know how to fix the holes in our ozone layer. You don't know how to bring the salmon back up a dead stream. You don't know how to bring back an animal now extinct.